Now, I spoke to New York Post columnist Miranda Devine a bit earlier today as the fallout from Trump's Iran strike continues to ripple well beyond the battlefield and into MAGA circles. Miranda, great to see you. Now, you know Trump very well. From what sources have told me, he really took his time to think about this. He didn't rush into a decision on the war. He consulted widely, not just with Israel, but with the Arab nations as well. Can you tell us what you know about some of this process that the president went through?
Yes, you're absolutely right. And I mean, this is, as John Howard has always said, you can't fatten a pig on market day. Donald Trump, since his first term, has really put a lot of effort into having cordial relations with the other Arab nations. And of course, you saw the outcome of that with the Abraham Accords in his first term. And he's continued to do that, quite unlike his predecessor, Joe Biden, who alienated Saudi Arabia almost on day one. And so he's worked hard at that. And I think you're seeing the fruits of those efforts with the fact that now those Arab nations, the Gulf nations, are very much supporting Donald Trump, America, and, Israel in this attack on Iran. And what we're told behind the scenes is that while they don't want to say it publicly, that they are expressing gratitude to the administration for wiping out the Ayatollah, and a regime that was menacing the entire region, was the big bully of the region. So I think that has paid off. And it's interesting that Donald Trump feels that he's getting more support from those nations in the Middle East than from some of his traditional allies, America's traditional allies in Europe. And he singled out, particularly today in the Oval Office when he was meeting with the German Chancellor, he singled out Spain and also had another slap at Keir Starmer in the UK, said they've been very disappointing. And he went so far as to instruct the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, who is standing there in the Oval Office, to cut off Spain. We don't want to do any more trade with Spain, he said. And then he said, and he's very disappointed with the UK for, similarly to Spain, refusing to allow the US to use their bases to conduct these attacks on Iran. And he said that Starmer was no Winston Churchill.
And it's a really interesting point because while you wouldn't expect America or Israel to share every detailed piece of their military plans, Miranda, you can imagine under previous administrations like Bush and Howard that the Five Eyes partnership would have meant something, that Australia's leadership, that the British Prime Minister would have known there was going to be military action. But they were kept completely out of the loop. The first the leadership in Australia or the UK or Canada knew was when it was reported in public. That does say a lot, doesn't it, about how the Trump administration and even the wider American apparatus doesn't trust these current left-leaning prime ministers like Anthony Albanese and Starmer.
Yes, look, it does say a lot about the loss of trust in the Five Eyes partnership, which has been so important to Australia. Although I must say that I think Trump was perfectly happy with Anthony Albanese's statement. He was pretty sound in his response, supporting the attacks on Iran. So that makes a nice change. And I do agree, though. I mean, it's really quite disappointing. And you've seen now J.D. Vance a year ago and Marco Rubio more recently, the Secretary of State, going to Europe and saying to the Munich Security Conference and basically saying, Vance in a very aggressive way and Marco Rubio in a more diplomatic way, that, Europe, you're our oldest and deepest allies, but you've lost your way when it comes to especially mass immigration, losing your identity, things like just refusing to pay your own way for your own defense. This is something that Donald Trump has also been sounding the alarm on. And it's I'm not sure if Europe understands that this is a complete sea change in sentiment, not something that's going to go away when Trump's gone. This is a sea change in America. The American people, certainly the Republican Party, and the Democrats will follow suit if, once they get back into office, because um, the feeling is that the rest of the world has been freeloading off the United States, and that, since the end of the Cold War, at the very least, that everyone needs to pull their own weight. And while America does punch above its weight in terms of defense of its allies, you can't allow, and this is the way the administration feels, these countries in Europe, which spend vast sums of money on having a welfare state, providing welfare for their citizens that American citizens don't get, while American taxpayers, their money is going to defend these countries. So no more Mr. Nice Guy from that point of view.
Just finally, Miranda, can you explain to us the sentiment about this war within the MAGA movement and then the Republican Party more broadly, and also what influence figures like Tucker Carlson are having with his quite extreme anti-Israel view?
Look, the Republican vote, there are polls coming out showing very high support for Trump's actions in Iran and getting rid of the Ayatollah. Something, I've seen polls between sort of 75 and 85% approval. Of course, that's contingent on it being a short, sharp shock and not lasting any longer than it needs to be, and certainly no ground troops. So I think at the moment people are very happy with what Trump's done, and it's gone well. The war, the actions have gone well so far, and but it can't drag on, and I think no one's more acutely aware of that than Donald Trump. And Tucker Carlson, who I was very friendly with and had a lot of respect for, but he's really, I think, worn out his welcome with the White House. Donald Trump invited him there recently, in as much as just to hear him out, but also let him know that his influence was going to make no difference. And he's now written him off. I hear there's just no way that he has sway in the White House anymore. And obviously, J.D. Vance is not listening to him either, because he's right behind Donald Trump's actions in Iran. And in fact, the New York Times reported the other day that Vance's advice to Trump was to get in, do it big, and get out quickly. So I think that's probably, Trump is not interested in democracy building a la Bush. He's not interested in, regime change where Americans impose a new leader. He said from the beginning that it'll be up to the Iranian people. And what the Americans are doing is degrading all Iran's defenses in the most spectacular way. Yesterday they got hold of all their, dominance in the air.
Miranda Devine, really grateful for your time and great to see you again as always.
Thanks, Sharri, and good on you.